I am the Director of Finance and Operations for Abramson Sci Academy. What that means is that I'm in a support role for teachers and other staff. What drives me every day is I come from a family of educators who have had varying experiences working in education, some rewarding, some very difficult. And what drives me is thinking of my family and wanting to serve educators in the best way possible to make sure they have what they need to serve students. One of the biggest difficulties we had daily was making sure we had enough staff on campus to cover for staff who were absent. One of the challenges was we had a lot of day of absences that would occur when staff were sick and things like that. And there's always a big scramble in the morning to make sure that we had those folks on campus. It's really the long-term absences that I think had the most negative impact on students, because we would have to have a different sub in their class every single day, so there wasn't consistency there. Also, just the stress that puts on staff having to cover their own classes in addition to another teammate's class or another position that's not been filled. Yeah, there were a number of times first semester where we'd have up to 10 to 15 staff members out on a given day. And there were times where we just couldn't find anybody to cover a class, or our receptionist who's in charge of coverage was really struggling to find somebody capable of doing that. And seeing that amount of stress that it put on her and also overall staff having to find coverage, really, when I was presented with the original presentation from Scoot from one of our network teammates, I was like, great, I would love to try something to try and make this easier. So it happened over a semester or so where I was like, I went from not being on board for using a third-party sub company to really being excited to work with y'all at the beginning of this year. So we'd originally worked with another company that did an okay job providing staff members on a given day, but they were not very high quality educators. It was not worth the money that we were paying to try and have them on our campus, because a lot of times either they would not show up on time or wouldn't be prepared or would not conduct themselves in a way that contributed positively to our overall staff culture. Now, this was something that happened before I started in my position, so I didn't have a lot of firsthand experience working with this other company, but I heard nothing but horror stories about their people and their reliability. And so it was decided before I started in my role that we would move away from using them and start doing all of our coverage internally, which helped with maintaining consistency as far as the cultural expectations in classrooms, but added extra stress onto some of our teammates who had to organize coverage and the teammates that were being asked consistently to provide coverage. So that's why we wanted to have another option in addition to doing internal coverage, which is why we started looking at using Scoot. I spoke with a few of your representatives, including Marshall, and what I saw was a real eagerness to work with our school in a way that suited our needs, as far as making sure that the teammates that we had in long-term positions were very qualified. One thing that we can do is we can be pretty confident that if a teammate leaves, we will have another qualified educator to replace them in the short term within a day or two. Whereas beforehand, we were going to have to struggle with finding a person either to pay a stipend to, or finding a different person each day in order for that class to have an educator in it. So that's one thing that's relieved as far as stress. We're not having to worry about if a person leaves, who are we going to get to replace them? We know we can rely on you to provide somebody who is going to be really qualified and aligned with our culture and will really ingrain themselves on the team in a way I don't think other subs would, to fill that gap. The educators that y'all have provided have been very high quality, so I don't have to worry about who's going to show up on our campus. And also, you have a really strong culture of feedback to your team. So the few times we've had somebody that hasn't worked out, we've responded by filling out the evaluation form at the end of the day. And y'all have been very quick about pivoting and sending another person who's more aligned with what we need. I will say, based on the people that you send us, I can really tell that you invest heavily in training and in finding qualified educators, because especially the 3 that we've had on campus long-term this semester, we would love to have on our team permanently. Also, the representatives that we've worked with have been very, very friendly and very easy to work with, which is a relief, because we work with a lot of third-party vendors in New Orleans, and it can be hard to find somebody who's reliable and easy to work with. And I think of all the vendors that I've dealt with, y'all have been the easiest. I think one of the first weeks we had an educator named John Patterson, who's one of our long-term subs, starting a class that had been really difficult in the previous semester. Their previous teacher had quit suddenly after being very frustrated with the culture of the class. And Mr. Patterson immediately came in and started really just owning the classroom. One of our students who has had a lot of challenges behavioral-wise in the past, and I think was actually in the previous class that had basically driven the last teacher off, made the comment like, hey, y'all, I really like Mr. Patterson. Y'all are not going to act the same way this time, which coming from this student was amazing to hear, because like I said, it's a student who struggled a lot, but she really took to Mr. Patterson, and he's really owned that classroom in a way that is pretty remarkable considering his time here. I'd say that the educators that we have from Scoot, especially the ones who have been in long-term positions, have mainly been very easy to work with, eager to serve students well, really feel like a part of our team. Like, I sometimes forget that some of them aren't directly employed by the school. They've really ingrained themselves in our culture, which even for experienced educators coming from different schools might take some adjustment. They've been very reliable, especially the subs that are coming in for day of absences. They have shown up on time. They have been well dressed, ready to go, very eager to serve students. And anytime we've had an educator that does not meet that bar, y'all have been able to immediately pivot and send us somebody that does meet our needs.